is Mrs. Johnson. I am going to read to you the book, The Life and Work of Paul Cezanne, by Sean Connolly. Who was Paul Cezanne? Paul Cezanne was a painter. He used colors and shapes to paint pictures of nature. He helped change the way artists see and paint things around them. Cezanne painted this portrait of himself when he was about 60 years old. By that time, his ideas about painting had already changed the world of art. Early years. Paul Cezanne was born January 19, 1839, in Aix-en-Provence, France. One of his childhood friends was named Émile Zola. The boys loved to hike the countryside near their homes. Paul studied drawing when he was a teenager. He often drew pictures on his walks in the country. These drawings show how he was interested in nature. Life in Paris. Paul wanted to be an artist. His father wanted him to be a lawyer. When Paul was 22 years old, his father gave him money to move to Paris and become a painter. Paul's friend Émile Zola had become a famous writer in Paris. He liked Paul's work. He told other people about it. This painting shows a friend of Paul's reading to Émile. Swapping ideas. In Paris, Paul became friends with a painter named Camille Pissarro. They would go to Camille's country house and paint outside. These trips reminded Paul of home. Paul did this sketch of Camille Pissarro in 1874. It shows how the painters would pack their things and hike to a favorite spot to paint. Brush with fame. Painters called the Impressionists like Paul's paintings. They showed two of Paul's paintings at their first exhibit in 1874 in Paris. The exhibit was in a building on this street. This landscape was shown at the exhibit. It shows how Paul used strong colors. The patches of light and dark show the shape of the houses. Ideas of his own. Paul wanted to try different ways of painting. Patterns of color and shape were more important to him than exact copies of a scene. Paul did this painting when he was 38 years old. He used thick, rough patches of paint to show how he saw this woodland pond. Between two worlds. Paul studied the work of great artists of the past. He liked the French and Dutch masters who had lived more than 200 years before him. The artists of the past loved still life painting. Paul's painting of this blue vase shows that he loved still life painting too. New freedom. Paul's father died in 1886. Paul inherited enough money to live well. He did not have to worry about whether people would buy his paintings or not. Paul was free to do the paintings he wanted to do in new ways. Paul used small blocks of color to make this landscape painting. Ordinary people. Even though Paul was rich, he still thought of himself as ordinary. He painted other ordinary people and used his ideas about color and shape. This is one of the many pictures Paul painted of card players. Although he was painting people, Paul saw the scene as a pattern of colors. Southern sunshine. Paul began to spend more time near his childhood home. He studied the way that the sun changed the color of the countryside. Paul liked to paint this mountain called Mont Saint-Victor. This painting shows how he used colors and shapes to show distance. Turning to people. Ambrose Vollard, an art dealer in Paris, held a successful exhibit of Paul's paintings in 1895. At the same time, Paul worked on portraits. This is a portrait of Ambrose Vollard. Paul worked hard on each painting. He never finished this one, even though Ambrose had to pose for it 115 times. A favorite view. Paul worked mainly in southern France. He still painted Mont Saint-Victor to show his ideas about color, light, and shape. This view of the mountain in 1904 shows how Paul's work had changed. The mountain had become just a blurred pattern of color. Cezanne's last years. As Paul grew older, he still painted. He even ordered new paintbrushes just before he died. Paul died October 22, 1906. He was 67 years old. By that time, people knew he was a great painter. In 1905, 1 year before he died, Paul did this watercolor painting. This type of painting was less tiring for Paul as he grew older. Timeline. Paul Cezanne, born January 19, 1839. 1861, moves to Paris to become a painter. 1861 to 65, Civil War in the United States. 1860s, learns more about painting from Camille Pissarro. 1870 to 71, War between France and Germany. 1871, begins to paint outside to see light and color more clearly. 1874, has two paintings shown in the first Impressionist exhibit. 1876, Alexander Graham Bell invents the telephone. 1886, Paul's father dies. 1893, first motion picture camera developed in France. 1895, Ambrose Vollard sets up one-man exhibit of Cezanne's paintings. 1902, builds new studio to view Mount Saint-Victor. 1903, Wright brothers fly the first airplane. 1906, Paul Cezanne dies October 22.